Welcome to my YouTube channel. Hit the like button, share your thoughts, subscribe, and tap the bell icon. The sound of laughter echoed off the high classroom walls like a taunt. Mr. Langford stood tall in front of the whiteboard, arms folded, marker in hand, smugness painted all over his face. On the board behind him, an intimidating calculus. Problems stretched across the surface like a spiderweb of confused limits, integrals, and strange notations that made most of the seniors' heads spin. It wasn't from the curriculum. He had drawn it up from one of his old university textbooks to prove a point. Anyone? He asked, pacing in front of the class like a lion watching prey. Come on, seniors. Who here thinks they're smarter than me? A few students shifted awkwardly in their seats. Others chuckled nervously. No one raised a hand. Didn't think so, he said, setting the marker down with a smug click. This one's beyond all of you. In fact, that's when the door creaked open. A grey janitor cart rolled into the room. Pushing it was Lorna James's school janitor. Quiet, wore the same blue uniform every day. Most students hardly noticed her, just the woman who mopped floors and wiped marker boards when everyone was gone. But not today. Mr. Langford glanced at her. Something in his face lit up, not kindness. Something worse. He turned back to the class. Actually, let's have a little fun. He raised his voice. Ms. Lorna. Lorna paused by the front row. Her back straightened slightly, but she didn't look up. Double quotes. Yes, she said, her voice low and respectful. Mr. Langford gestured dramatically to the board. Any interest in giving this one a shot? I mean, since you're already holding the mop, maybe you can clean up this equation too. A few students laughed. Lorna's eyes slowly lifted to the board, her expression unreadable. Not angry, not embarrassed, just ... Tired. She said nothing. Langford continued, clearly enjoying himself. Who knows, maybe you've got a hidden genius inside you, or maybe I'm just being too hopeful. Mr. Langford, that's kind of mean, a girl near the window muttered, but he ignored her. Then, something strange happened. Lorna wheeled the cart to the side of the room. She walked calmly up to the whiteboard and picked up the marker. No one expected her to do it. Langford raised an eyebrow. Wait, are you serious? Lorna didn't answer. She uncapped the marker, stared at the equation for 2 seconds, and then started writing. The classroom fell silent. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3, and then the marker began to dance. Fast, controlled, lines formed, equations unfolded. Her hand moved with the kind of confidence that only comes from years of repetition, not guessing, not luck. Mastery. The students watched, eyes widening with every symbol she added. A boy in the back started recording it on his phone. Langford walked slowly toward the board, frowning. Each line she wrote pushed the smirk further off his face. His arms dropped to his sides. After 4 minutes of flawless work, Lorna boxed the final answer and capped the marker. She turned to him, her voice calm, clear, and quiet enough to make the silence heavier. I used to teach this, she said. Before life happened. Nobody laughed this time. She turned, walked back to her cart, and pushed it toward the hallway. The classroom door creaked shut behind her, leaving the room suspended in a stunned silence. Langford stared at the board. One student whispered, "Did she get it right?" Langford didn't answer, but the truth was obvious. Her solution wasn't just correct. It was elegant. The boy with the phone posted the video clip on TikTok with the caption, "Teacher mocks janitor with calculus gets destroyed." By morning, it had over 2 million views, and that was just the beginning, because someone in that video recognized her. Not as a janitor, but as someone who once had a very different life. The past doesn't stay hidden. Lorna hadn't slept, not really. Even though her shift ended at 6 p.m., she stayed late, quietly wiping down desks and scrubbing cafeteria floors like always. But everywhere she went, she felt it: the stares, whispers, the energy of people who suddenly saw her differently, but didn't know why. She didn't need to check her phone to know something had changed. By the time she reached the janitor's locker room that night, her face was already on a dozen social media accounts. Some praised her brilliance, others demanded answers. A few had even started a hashtag #GeniusJanitor. But Lorna wasn't smiling. She sat on the bench, eyes on the rusted locker in front of her, hands clasped tightly. That life, the one she thought she buried 10 years ago, was clawing its way back. Meanwhile, in the school's staff room the next morning, chaos was brewing. She did what Mrs. Carter gasped, nearly spilling her tea. "I'm telling you, she solved it faster than Langford could have," Mr. Doyle said, still clutching his phone, replaying the video on loop. "And the way she said it, I used to teach this, like it was nothing." Mr. Langford stormed into the room, face pale. "Oh, speak of the devil," Doyle muttered. Langford threw his bag on the couch and barked, "This is out of control. It was a harmless joke, and now everyone thinks I'm some kind of monster. You mocked her in front of a class, and she outsmarted you," Carter said bluntly. "What did you expect?" Langford pointed a trembling finger at his phone. "Did you read the comments? People think she should be teaching here. They're calling me the fraud." "Well," Doyle said quietly, "what if they're not wrong?" Langford stared at him. "She's a janitor. Maybe not always," Doyle replied. That's when Principal Renee stepped in. "Staff meeting now." Across town, in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment, Lorna stood over her kitchen sink, staring at the stack of unpaid bills beside an empty coffee mug. She hadn't watched the full video, but her daughter, Soraya, had. "Mom," Soraya said cautiously, sitting at the table, "people are commenting from universities. Some are even offering interviews." "I don't want interviews," Lorna replied quietly. "But why? You could go viral, get support, maybe even." I said no. Soraya flinched but didn't argue. There was a time Lorna loved math more than anything. The precision, the logic, the clean way everything balanced if you just looked at it the right way. But her life, it had never balanced. 10 years ago, she had stood in a different classroom. Back then, she was Dr. Lorna James, Ph.D. in applied mathematics, youngest tenured professor at the state university, published, respected, and engaged. To a man who would eventually betray her in the cruelest way possible. It started with lies, then missing grant funds, then accusations, some false, some carefully planted, and when it all came crashing down, she took the fall to protect someone she had once loved blindly. By the time she realized how deep the betrayal went, it was too late. Her career was over, her name tarnished. And with a daughter to raise alone, she took whatever work she could get, which led her to mop floors at Jefferson High. Now, that fragile piece she'd built was cracking again. Back at school, the halls buzzed louder than ever. Students leaned against lockers, scrolling TikTok, whispering theories. Maybe she was some kind of math prodigy. Bet she's secretly working undercover. "Dude, I heard she's got a PhD and was framed." Or something. Even the teachers couldn't control the flood of questions. In room 203, Langford tried to teach, but his voice kept catching. The students weren't listening. Their eyes kept flicking to the door, as if hoping she might appear again and solve another impossible equation. At lunch, Principal Renee called Lorna into her office. She entered quietly, back straight, eyes calm. "Ms. James," Renee said, folding her hands, "I need to ask you something off the record." Lorna nodded. "Were you once Dr. Lorna James of State University?" Lorna hesitated, then gave a slow nod. "I see," Renee said softly. "I looked into it after the video. Your record was impressive. And what happened to you? Well, I'm sorry. I don't want sympathy," Lorna said. "I just want to do my job." "But you were never meant to clean classrooms," Renee replied. Lorna's lips trembled. "I don't regret the work. I regret trusting the wrong person." There was a pause. Renee leaned forward. "What if we gave you something more? I could speak to the board. We're short on advanced math tutors. You could start there." Lorna stared at her. "You don't owe me that." "No," Renee replied. "But maybe the world does." Lorna didn't answer. Outside the office, 2 students sat listening. One of them was the boy who had filmed the video, and he had just uploaded something new, a screenshot of an old article. Headline: Dr. Lorna James resigns amid controversy. Subheadline: Tenured math professor implicated in missing funds investigation. The caption under his post said, "Is our janitor a criminal or a genius? Who really is Lorna James?" The story was no longer just viral. It was about to explode. The man who took everything. Lorna stood in the back stairwell of Jefferson High, gripping her phone, staring at the headline now circling the internet like wildfire. Former professor turned janitor. Scandal-tied academic resurfaces. #Lorna James was now trending in 5 states. She knew this moment would come, that someone, somewhere, would dig up the past she had fought so hard to bury, and now it was here, clawing its way into her present. She sat on the concrete step, head bowed, Her janitor uniform felt tighter, heavier, like a costume, like chains. 10 years ago, Dr. Lorna James had been on track to become one of the most respected mathematicians in the country. She'd lectured internationally, published papers in journals that most scholars only dreamed of. She even helped develop a theory used in national defense algorithms, and beside her through it all was Marcus Kane, brilliant, charismatic, and cold behind the charm. He was the head of their department, older by a decade, married. At the time, that didn't stop him from pursuing her, encouraging her ideas, co-authoring papers, whispering promises of a future together, and Lorna, blinded by ambition and admiration, believed him. What she didn't know was that Marcus was forging grant proposals behind her back, using her name, her credentials, her research. When the financial discrepancies surfaced, the university launched an investigation. Marcus disappeared in sabbatical, they said, but she stayed, and when the documents were reviewed, they all pointed back to her login, her signature. No one believed her. She was pushed to resign quietly or face public indictment. Lorna didn't fight it. Why? Because back then, she still thought Marcus would fix it. He never did. He vanished from academia completely after that, moved to another state, got married again, reinvented himself. She lost everything: her title, her savings, her dignity, with a daughter to raise and bills piling up. She took the only job that would hire her with a tarnished record and no references, janitorial work at Jefferson High, and for 10 years, she scrubbed away her shame, floor by floor. Until now, back in the teacher's lounge, the staff was in a frenzy. "This is huge," Mrs. Carter said, slapping a printed article on the table. She was framed. "The files are all circumstantial." Mr. Doyle squinted at the screen. "It says Marcus Kane never responded to media inquiries. No official charges were ever filed." Langford paced behind them, arms folded, face burning red. "It doesn't matter. She lied on her application, didn't disclose her past." Carter shot him a glare. "She didn't lie. She didn't have to list unrelated history when applying for janitorial work." "You're missing the point," Langford snapped. "She's dangerous, unstable. The school's going to look ridiculous if this blows up bigger." "She's brilliant," Doyle countered. "She's a victim, and if you had an ounce of humility, you'd admit you humiliated her, and she handled it with more grace than most of us ever could." Langford stormed out, muttering something about legal liability. By lunch, Lorna was summoned again to the principal's office. This time, Principal Renee wasn't alone. A district supervisor sat at the table, along with an HR rep. Lorna kept her posture straight, her tone measured. She had nothing to hide anymore. "I assume this is about the headlines," she said. Renee nodded. "We've reviewed everything. We've also spoken to a few parents who, well, they're concerned, but others are sending emails and support. Dozens." The HR rep leaned forward. "We just need to confirm, you were never charged, correct?" "Correct," Lorna said. "And you never misrepresented your identity." "I applied for a cleaning position, not a teaching one." The supervisor gave a slight nod. "Then, technically, you haven't broken any policies." Principal Renee smiled gently. "We'd like to offer you something better than mopping floors." Lorna hesitated. "There's an advanced math tutoring program we run after hours. Struggling seniors, we could use someone like you. Paid official. You won't be faculty yet, but it's a start." Lorna's eyes welled up, but she blinked it back. She didn't need their pity. But maybe, just maybe, she could accept their faith. "I'll think about it," she whispered. That evening, while scrolling through old emails she hadn't touched in years, one unread message caught her eye. Sender: Marcus Kane's subject: "We need to talk." Her hands trembled. She opened it. "Lorna, I saw the video, and the articles. I suppose the past doesn't stay buried forever. We need to meet, before this spirals into something worse for both of us." Marcus. She stared at the screen for a full minute. 10 years of silence. 10 years of pain. 10 years of pain. And now he wanted to talk. Soraya entered the room, her school bag sliding off her shoulder. "Mom, everything okay?" Lorna's voice cracked as she whispered. He reached out. Soraya's eyes widened. "Him, the one who?" Lorna nodded. "What are you going to do?" Lorna closed the laptop and stood. "Find out if he's still the same man who ruined my life." The meeting. Lorna chose the place carefully. Not a quiet park, not a fancy cafe. She picked a rundown diner on the edge of town, the kind with cracked vinyl booths, humming fluorescent lights, and a jukebox that hadn't worked in a decade. a place where nothing sparkled, a place that couldn't lie. She arrived early and chose a corner booth near the window. Her hands trembled slightly as she stirred the sugar into her coffee. Even though she hadn't added any, the bell above the door jingled. She didn't look up. She didn't have to. She could feel him before she saw him. Marcus Kane hadn't changed much. Still well-groomed, still walking like he owned every room he entered, still wearing the smug half-smile that used to make her feel safe before it became the symbol of her downfall. He slid into the seat across from her without asking. His cologne hit her like a memory she didn't want. "Lorna," he said smoothly, like they were old friends. "You look, well, I look tired," she said flatly. "Because I am." He leaned back, scanning her face. "I saw the video. You still have it, that mind. The way you handled that problem. Incredible." She didn't smile. "Don't flatter me. Just say what you came to say." Marcus exhaled. "All right. Look, I didn't come here to start trouble. I came to offer a way out." Lorna raised an eyebrow. "Out of what, exactly? Being humiliated? Cleaning floors while everyone pretended not to see me? Or being framed for something I didn't do?" His eyes twitched. "It wasn't supposed to go that way. You were supposed to be protected." "I protected you," she snapped. "I stayed silent. I didn't drag your name through the mud, even though I had every reason to. And you vanished." Marcus's charm cracked. His jaw tightened. "I was forced to leave. You think I just walked away without consequence? I lost tenure too." She laughed bitterly. "You landed a consulting job 3 months later. I ended up scrubbing gum off desks while raising my daughter alone." The mention of Soraya made his face stiffen. "Is she still doing okay?" he asked cautiously. Lorna's voice chilled. You don't get to ask about her." Silence fell between them. The waitress passed, sensing the tension, and kept walking. Marcus finally leaned forward. "Lorna, the story's gaining traction. Journalists are digging. If this becomes a national story, both our names go under the microscope, and I can't afford that." Lorna's lips curled slightly. "So this is self-preservation." "I'm offering you a deal," he said quickly. "I'll release a public statement. I'll say the grant errors were mine, that you didn't know. I'll clear your name." She narrowed her eyes. "And what do you want in return?" He hesitated. "You keep quiet about what you found." Lorna froze, he noticed. She stared at him, voice soft. "You think I don't remember?" His face paled. "Lorna, don't lie now," she said. "I may have gone quiet, but I kept the records. The emails, the grant code with your digital signature on every transaction. I printed everything before I left. You didn't cover your tracks as well as you thought. You could have exposed me then," he said, voice shaking. "I was scared. You were powerful, connected. I was alone, and I thought I loved you." He lowered his gaze. She continued, "But this time, I'm not going to protect you." Marcus looked up, panic flashing in his eyes. "If this goes public, I'll be ruined. You ruined yourself. You'll bring down both of us." "No," Lorna said. "You dragged me into the mud. I just learned how to walk through it." She stood up, grabbed her coat. "You have 48 hours to clear my name publicly, or I release everything." He tried to grab her arm, but she stepped back, eyes blazing. "And if you ever come near my daughter, I will bury you." She walked out of the diner into the cold, sharp air, her heart pounding like a war drum. Later that night, in her apartment, Soraya watched her mother quietly pack away a stack of old file folders into a secure envelope. "You met him," Soraya said, sitting cross-legged on the couch. "I did." And Lorna looked at her daughter, and for the first time in years, her voice held steel. "He's scared." Soraya tilted her head. "Are you going to expose him?" Lorna nodded slowly. "If he doesn't make this right, I will. I let one man silence me once, never again." She walked to the kitchen and pulled out a dusty box from the top shelf. Inside was a faded business card, an old journalist friend she hadn't spoken to since her university days. She picked up her phone. It was time to reclaim the truth. The smear campaign by Monday morning. The story had made the local news, viral. Janitor, once esteemed math professor scandal reignited. Is Dr. Lorna James a victim ... or a liar? Lorna stood in the janitor's supply closet at Jefferson High, clutching her phone as the broadcast played on loop. Her name was everywhere: news banners, online forums, even daytime talk shows. Part of her wanted to crawl back into silence, but another part, the part that had been crushed, humiliated, and buried for a decade, stood straighter. She hadn't. Heard from Marcus since their meeting at the diner. No public statement, no apology. Just silence, so she made the first move. That morning she sent a full dossier emails, grant documents, internal university memos, to her old colleague, Natalie Briggs, now a respected investigative journalist. Natalie replied within hours. Lorna, this is explosive. I remember the whispers back then, but I never knew the truth. I'm running with it. National outlets will follow once I go live. Time to clear your name. Lorna stared at the message for a long time. Relief mingled with fear. She was finally stepping into the light, but someone else was watching. In a sleek apartment downtown. Marcus sat in front of his laptop, a glass of bourbon untouched beside him. His jaw tightened as he read Natalie's article draft. She had everything, even the bank transfers. His lawyer's voice rang in his head. If this goes live, your career is dead. You'll be unhirable, finished. Panic surged, so he made a call to an old friend who owed him favors. Discredit her, he said coldly. Whatever it takes. The attack came fast. By evening, Twitter threads were lighting up with new allegations that Lorna had intentionally signed off on the grants, that she'd accepted hush money, that she had once been fired from another teaching job. A complete lie. Fake screenshots, edited emails, twisted half-truths. Even some of the students began to question her story. I mean, how do we know she didn't do it? One girl said in the hallway, I thought she was cool, but now I'm not sure. Another muttered. Lorna felt the shift like a cold wind through her skin. Whispers returned, not out of admiration but suspicion. She sat in the faculty break room during her lunch break, staring at her cold sandwich, when Principal Renee walked in holding a printed copy of the viral smear thread. Renee placed it gently on the table. This is getting ugly, I know. We've received 2 parent complaints demanding we remove you from the building. Lorna blinked. So what now? Am I suspended? No, Renee said firmly. You're not a criminal. You're not even staff, not officially. But I'm going to ask something hard. Lorna looked up. Do you want to step back for a few days? Let it calm down. Lorna swallowed. Her pride wanted to scream no, but her heart was tired. I'll take the rest of the week. Renee gave a soft nod. I believe you, Lorna. I always have. Soraya found her mother sitting in the apartment living room that night, staring out the window. Mom, she said gently, I saw the videos. Some are brutal. I expected it, but it's not fair. You showed them proof. I know. But people believe what's louder, not what's true. Soraya sat beside her. So what now? Lorna reached into her bag and pulled out a USB drive, the last one. The one that held something no one else had seen. A video. She handed it to Soraya. I've been saving this. Soraya plugged it into her laptop. The screen lit up with a recorded faculty meeting from 10 years ago. One Lorna had secretly filmed after growing suspicious. In it, Marcus stood in front of a whiteboard, instructing a junior professor on how to reroute funds for emergency conference costs. Lorna's voice could be heard off camera, asking why the money wasn't in the grant report. Marcus waved her off. You're overthinking it, Lorna. Just sign. Soraya gasped. This. This is everything. Lorna nodded. It's time to end this. Natalie Briggs received the video just past midnight. Within hours, it was online, shared by every major outlet. Exclusive, secret video shows Marcus Kane directing grant fraud. Dr. Lorna James vindicated. After a decade of silence, the internet flipped overnight. Where there was doubt, there was now fury. Marcus's name trended globally. His former employers cut ties. Legal analysts speculated he could face federal charges. And Lorna, she woke up to thousands of messages. One stood out. Ms. James, this is the Dean of Stanford's Department of Mathematics. We watched your video, and were deeply impressed by both your resilience and brilliance. Would you be open to a conversation about a position here? Lorna stared at the message in stunned silence. Then she smiled for the first time in a very, very long time. More than a janitor. The morning of the school assembly. The auditorium buzzed, louder than ever. Students packed every seat. Teachers stood along the walls. Even news crews hovered discreetly near the exits. It wasn't a graduation, or a sports award, or even a visiting celebrity. It was for a janitor, but not just any janitor. Lorna James. A week ago, most students didn't even know her name. Now, they couldn't stop saying it. Up on stage, Principal Renee adjusted the mic. I want to welcome you all, she said, her voice steady, Today isn't about a scandal. It isn't even about math. It's about truth, and it's about redemption. She turned slightly, motioning behind her. And it's about a woman who showed more grace under pressure than most of us ever could. The students stood. They didn't clap, they rose. And then she appeared. Lorna stepped onto the stage, slowly, wearing a simple black dress instead of her janitor uniform. Her steps were quiet, but her presence was thunder. The room filled with applause. Not polite, not obligatory, real, honest, loud. She stood at the podium, looked over the sea of young faces, and exhaled deeply. I wasn't sure if I should come, she began. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know if I was ready to be seen. The room fell completely silent. For 10 years, I cleaned your hallways, emptied your trash, erased your whiteboards, and for most of that time, I did it without anyone really seeing me. I became part of the background, something invisible. She paused, but I wasn't always invisible. Once, I stood in lecture halls. I traveled. I taught. I researched. I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong people. And I lost everything. She let the silence hang. I accepted that. I thought it was the price I had to pay for being naive, for being a black woman who believed hard work would protect her. A few heads turned, some bowed. But this past week, something changed. Not because I solved a math problem, but because I stopped apologizing for surviving. A tear slid down a student's cheek. I thought I'd buried the best parts of me. But you, every one of you, me a reason to dig them back up. She glanced toward the back of the room. Soraya stood near the exit, filming quietly, eyes filled with pride. So here's what I've learned. You can take away someone's title, their job, their money, but you can't take away their mind, and you can't erase truth forever. The room erupted in applause. But more importantly, she added, raising a hand, we have to start seeing people, not for their uniforms, not for their paychecks, but for their potential. A few teachers were wiping their eyes now. I was a janitor. I was also a mother. And once, I was a professor. Today, I am all of those things again, and proud of it. As the standing ovation thundered through the room, Principal Renee stepped forward and handed her a velvet folder. Inside was a letter, stamped and signed. Lorna James had been officially reinstated as an academic instructor. Her title, Senior Math Coach and Curriculum Advisor, and in bold below, status, faculty. 3 months later, Lorna stood in front of a classroom not with a mop, but with a whiteboard marker. Let's talk integrals. She smiled. Her tutoring program had exploded in popularity. Students who once hated math now begged to stay after school. Even the teacher who once mocked her, Mr. Langford, had transferred to another school quietly. No fanfare. That chapter was closed. Stanford University called again. They offered her a guest lecture slot, then a visiting fellowship, then a permanent faculty position, but she said no, not because she wasn't tempted, but because she wasn't done here. Yet one Saturday evening, Lorna and Soraya walked past Jefferson High, hand in hand. The sun dipped behind the building, painting the sky in gold. Do you regret it? Soraya asked softly. Lorna smiled. No. If I hadn't lost everything, I wouldn't have found what mattered, which is, myself. They stopped under the school's brick sign. A new plaque had been mounted beneath it. It read, in honor of Dr. Lorna James, who reminded us that brilliance doesn't always wear a badge. Soraya hugged her mother tightly, and for the first time in a decade, Lorna felt whole. She had been mocked, dismissed, betrayed, but she hadn't just survived, she had risen. The end.